I think we're good to go. Okay, this is probably the most newcomers I've seen in a newcomers briefing in quite a long period of time, so welcome. My name is Mike St. John's. Are we good in the back? Okay, thanks. My name is Mike St. John's. I am going to be giving the newcomers tutorial, also known as Would You Like Instructions? This is my first time doing this. On the other hand, I've been dealing with the IETF for the entire 30 years of it. I happen to be the person who has the dubious honor of attending more of these than anybody else so far. One of these days I'll die and somebody will take over that, but you know, I'm intending to at least make it to 100 meetings. I put this up mainly because you're going to be seeing this in every single session you sit in. Okay, you don't have to read through it now. It's available, and you can read it there. The note well is basically telling you that when you're here, you're pretty much in public, and what you're talking about here is a contribution to the IETF. So be aware of what you're talking about when you're talking about it. If you've got things that are company confidential, go someplace else and talk about them there, not in the open sessions. So just read this later on. It's a useful thing to know about. Yeah. This session is all about giving you information that is immediately useful to you in this meeting. It's not the history of the IETF. There's lots of places to get that. Or you can buy one of the old guys a beer and we'll tell you what you want to know. It is also not how to write an RFC or a standard. Again, other places to go. Throughout the entire presentation, you're going to be seeing QR codes. This is something trying. I don't know whether or not it'll make any sense. If you're sitting in the audience, you can take a picture of that and get right to the link, or it's scannable from your paper copy as well. So in this particular case, this goes to the RFC editor website. It may or may not be useful for you. One of the things for new attendees is you sometimes get overwhelmed with everything that's going on. Part of this is pace yourself, enjoy yourself, don't become catatonic because you've taken in more than you can handle or that you've been spending your entire time here up and not getting any sleep. Talk about the IETF and the IETF meeting. We're going to talk about how the IETF differs from other standards development organizations. We're going to talk a little bit about the IETF culture. We're going to talk about how the IETF makes decisions, or IETF consensus. Give you a little bit of hint of what we'd like to see from you in terms of etiquette inside meetings and working group sessions. And I'll tell you a little bit about what working groups are, birds of feathers sessions are. Point out some useful people. Mainly I'm going to be decoding some of the dots for you. And talk about documents and tools coming out of your head. By the time all is done, we will hopefully have given you enough information that you'll be able to work your way through the IETF meeting, at least. We're an organized activity of the Internet Society. It wasn't always the case. The IETF started as an operations and engineering organization for the Department of Defense, National Science Foundation, Department of Energy, and NASA in putting together the beginnings of the Internet, the NASA Science Internet, ARPANET, MILNET, and those pieces. About meeting 10, we turned into a standards organization. So we've been around here for quite a long time. We've been doing this for about 30 years. The IETF consists of many, many, many working groups, generally organized into areas. These are the current sets of areas: applications in real time, general, internet, operations management, routing, security, and transport. That's just administrative, but if you're doing something, chances are the working group that you're working on will have other working groups in that same area that you might be interested in. So use that maybe as sort of a selector for what you want to go and see. Most of our standards work is done in the working groups. The working groups are semi-autonomous. They work under the guidance of the area directors. The IETF is an organized, like I said, an organized activity of the ISOC. So is the Internet Architecture Board, which you may have also heard about. I'm not going to tell you any more about these guys. It's in the organizational information that I'm going to point you at. Just be aware that besides the IETF, there's a lot of other things going on here. And we need a bigger room next time. Okay, so most of these details are not important to your meeting attendance today. By the way, if at any time, I'm going to hold questions until the end of the session. If at any time you can't hear me or I am talking too fast, please, gesture, gesticulate wildly and let me know what's going on. I don't mind, slowing down. I am fortunately not as bad as some other people in here who, we actually have a term called a milliecker, which if you've ever met Eric Rascorla, you will understand speech speed. So this meeting is about where are we at, Alexa, about 1,200 people?
Yes, at least.
Okay, so meetings right now are running about 1,000 to 1,500 people for every one of the sessions that happens 3 times a year. We've been as high as about 2,400 during the IETF, during the .com boom. We've been as low as 12 when we got started. I think the second meeting we had in the conference room, that was it. So within the IETF, we've got a bunch of organized events. The working group sessions, that's the most of what's going to be going on here, and that's the most of what you'll see people working on. A few birds of the feather sessions. I'll explain what birds of the feather sessions are a little bit later. IRTF sessions, Internet Research Task Force research group sessions. Again, I'll explain a little bit more of that later. Area-wide sessions. Almost every single one of those areas I mentioned before has a area directorate meeting in this meeting space. And for example, security area advisory group. Useful place if you want to get an overview of what an area is doing. So it's usually held later in the meeting, and it's usually a summary of what's been going on in the area at the meeting. IETF-wide plenaries. I think we're just doing one this time, and it's the combined administrative and technical plenary. We have had meetings where we've had 2 plenaries. This one, we just have one thing. There'll be tutorials and lunch sessions. Take a look at the agenda. You'll be able to see what's going on. Social events. In addition to the welcome reception and bits and bytes and various other things, you as newcomers are invited to a social event that I'll talk about a little bit later. Hackathons, code sprints, that's mostly going to be done by the end of today. Those are people working on tools for the IETF. Okay. Disorganized events are almost the most important ones that you're going to have here. This is the opportunity for you to meet and talk to the people who are at the IETF and to find out what they're excited about, what you're excited about, and get an idea what you want to do next. Bar boss tend to be a little bit more organized in the hall conversations. They are sometimes announced on the mailing list, or they are announced in a working group saying, we're interested in thinking about a new idea. We're not quite ready to bring that idea to the IETF, but we want to talk about it. So those things will happen here. And if you ever go walking through the corridors here, you will see people usually in a big circle or around a table with laptops open, working like crazy, talking a language nobody will ever understand except them. Those are the marathon editing sessions, and there will be a lot of them. If you are involved in that, feel free to join them. If not, please let them work. Okay. Finally, the agenda is your friend. I probably should start, I'm still working on the organization of this thing, so this may move up front. Okay, there's a couple different versions of the agenda. The QR code points to the first one of these things. Please go look at it. All the information that has been put together for a given working group is available through the agenda. It'll tell you when everything is, where everything is, whatever. Other thing that's really useful, there is an app. There's an app for the IETF. please go to the Apple App Store or to the Android equivalent, I guess Google Play. It's available there. It's free. Use it. You have to basically download the data for each meeting, but it's available, and it usually has things like maps on where you need to go. It has all the same information that you can get from here. Okay, just for curiosity's sake, how many people here have worked in a standards development organization that's not the IETF? Put your hands up. Okay, not too bad. You don't have a lot to relearn or unlearn for us. The IETF is a little bit different than every other organization that I've worked with a number of SDOs. We are very informal about how things do. Individual participants, you're all here not as people being sent from your company to represent your company. We think of you as you, not as your company, not as your organization, not as your country. So if you bring the ideas here, the ideas we want to hear are your ideas, okay? We have no formal government role, although people keep trying to make that happen sometimes. And we're all about having the best thing win in the market. So our standards tend to be about what works, not about what somebody wants to sell. Hopefully by the time it works, we want to sell it. So we are all focused on internet technologies. We don't do anything below the IP layer except for small little things like MPLS, and we don't do anything above the we sort of reach into the application layer a little bit. So you'll hear people say, yeah, it's not in scope for us, just believe it, and then go and figure out why they said it. Traditional SDOs, formal voting. You're going to be a national member or an organizational member almost exclusively. Good example, ISO, International Standards Organization. You vote by country, okay? We don't vote. Rarely individuals, treaty-based. Sometimes the standards that you put together in a regular standards development organization are mandated for adoption. You have to use them if you're going to be working with, say, the government or with an international company or something along those lines. And the standards are all over the place. They are the number of threads on a screw, metal tolerances. There's a standard, someplace around there, there's a standard for making fruitcakes. You know, things like that we don't do. Okay. If you've been involved in another standards development organization, take a breath. The IETF is not them. It may take you a little bit of time just to figure out what's going on, but it's pretty straightforward. Again, it's all about you as the contributor, not about what your company is pushing towards us. Sorry. This has happened. It hasn't happened in a while. We are very informal. We do have people here who show up in ties occasionally. Usually they stop doing it after a while. There's a few people that still come here in ties. It's okay. But don't be surprised if I'm sitting up here in shorts and a t-shirt next time. It's just the way the thing is. Very smart group of people, very opinionated. It's the way it is. It's a little bit like, sometimes it's a little bit like standards by combat. We try and avoid those types of things, but be aware that we are good technical people, not necessarily good people. Okay, so if you're in a conversation with somebody and they're being very forthright about their opinions, it's not that they're trying to be rude, this is the way they are. Not only here and probably back in their home organizations or their home companies. Mostly, they're not trying to be rude. Okay, I can point out the people occasionally who are trying to be rude. Yeah, they're not here. Okay. We have a culture. Occasionally people come in and expect their culture to be our culture. It's not the case. Over time, your impact on the organization will change what we are, but it's not going to happen overnight. So be aware you may have to do some adaptation as you come in and just pay attention to the signs and signals and learn about how we do things. If you don't like it, feel free to help us change. Now, the last one down here, the last comment down here, dumb ideas forcefully presented are still dumb ideas. One of the things that's happened from time to time, especially with organizations who are new to us, not just the people, but the organizations that are new to us, they come in with a lot of people trying to vote their idea into existence. Okay, it doesn't work here. Okay, if it's a dumb idea, the technical people are going to look at, oh, it's a dumb idea. This are what this organization are all about. So when you go into your meetings, please think about what the technical argument is, not what the political or economic argument or what your boss told you to tell us. Unless he has good technical arguments, of course. So we develop standards, and that's just about it. We're looking to make the internet better, more useful, continue on. We've changed technologies once in a really major way, IPv4 to IPv6. That was hard. We look for the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, and try and figure out how to make it work. We also try and make sure that it's manageable, that you can actually put it out into the field and deploy it, and it actually doesn't cause your IT guy or your network guy to be on the phone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, trying to figure out what that little knob meant, that when he turned it, the entire network crashed. So, man. We don't vote. Or we sort of vote, but we don't vote. The IETF believes in something called rough consensus, and what that means is that we do not need perfect consensus in a decision to go forward on a standard. We need rough consensus, which means that we've got a good number of the people who say this is a good idea, and we've considered all the other issues. All other issues are addressed, but they're not necessarily brought into the final solution. If you're ever sitting in a meeting or a working group here and you start hearing humming, it's not incipient feedback. Okay, that's a way of establishing or judging consensus. So for example, I would say to you guys, okay, am I more to the left or to the right of the center of the room? Would the left people hum? And then it would be judging consensus, and that could be something like right in the middle, and you just sort of be trying to guess where I was. So you'll hear those hums happen from time to time. If you know what you're doing, if you actually are familiar with the question, feel free to join in. If you're not, please don't. It just confuses things if we can't figure out what goes on, because the amount of humming and how loud it is gives you an idea of how many people have actually paid attention to the discussion. Most of this is pretty basic. We want you to be kind to everybody else, and we want to be kind to you. We do want you to introduce yourself. If you have a question, comment, suggestion, walk up to somebody, talk to them. This is an opportunity for you to become a part of the IETF. And the way you do it is by making yourself known, and by making yourself known in a good way. Speaking of a bad way, don't harass other participants. Feel free to harass yourself. Insulting yourself is fine. Insulting other people in a way that tries to get them not to be doing the standards job is just not right. This is the anti-harassment policy. If you are harassed, let someone know if you're harassed. Mostly what that means is you go talk to the ombudsman. Mostly you don't know what those people are as of yet. So what you do is you find somebody with a badge that has a colored dot on it, and you say help, and they will get you in the right direction. Okay, not just the little blue smiley face, but one of the chairs of the working group, and they will get you started. If you're in one of the receptions, please don't hog the food. We have. It's scary sometimes. The food comes out and it's just like charge, and at the end of it, it's like army ants have been through there. So take some, let other people get into it, and just continue forward. Don't leave your bag unguarded. We're mostly a good group of people, but we occasionally get people coming in from the outside. They grab stuff, they walk away. So if you're going to leave your bag, make sure somebody's watching it. Make sure you remember to sleep. And I'm not kidding about this one. One of the early IETFs had the longest working group session ever. It was host requirements. It ran from about 8 o'clock in the morning until about 2 o'clock in the morning the next day with small breaks. It was necessary to do it because we were trying to get the document out final. And you can see sort of where people were asleep if you go back and read host requirements. Still a useful document to this day, but the argument about whether or not it was a gateway or a host based on whether or not you were routing through a different interface was one of those things that just amazing. Okay. Working group sessions is where most of the stuff happens here. A working group session is all about high bandwidth interaction for people who are actually working in the working group. It's not a tutorial session, okay? If you haven't been spending time, feel free to listen, but feel free to be confused because you probably are because you don't have the context, okay? If you are involved in the thing, please, if you get up to speak directly in the microphone. Can you guys, is there any more space? Sorry, I've got people hanging out there. Every time you get to the microphone, first time you get up there, say your name and your organization. Second time, just say your name. We've got a bunch of people doing the recordings and the transcripts, the notations for the meetings. So be aware that they're there and help them so they know who's saying something, okay? And then you're going to see these blue sheets. Do we have blue sheets for this room?
We should, but I don't know where they are.
Yeah.
I'm going to get them before I drop.
Okay, so you will see a blue sheet, and it's basically a blue color sheet. Sign your name and your organization. Don't have to make it legible. We'd like to know who you are. It's basically used for so that we know so we can maintain some level of openness. So if somebody comes along saying, well, it was my idea, I was never in that working group, we've got some idea of what's going on in there. It's not that formal, but it's a useful thing to have. Working group session, different than the meeting session. When you're inside the working group, sign the blue sheets. Please read the working group drafts and the agenda. It will help you understanding what's going on there. Listen. If the speaker's not speaking loud enough, if he's speaking too fast, let them know. We can't do anything about it if we don't know there's a problem. So please let us know if there are problems. Feel free to comment if and only if you've actually read the stuff. Don't just get up and say, well, I thought that was a bad idea because such and such. If you don't know the conversation, it's usually not helpful to do that. Please read the information. Be an informed contributor. Don't hog the microphone. Yeah, well, I get 40 minutes to talk to you or 50 minutes to talk to you, but we can't do that in the working groups. Make your point, make it succinctly. If you want to make a longer point, you can use the Jabber session. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Or you can go back to the working groups mailing list. So you've got a lot of opportunities to make your point. Try and stay on point in what's going on in the working group. Don't hog the seats. Everybody look around you. Got a bag on the seat next to you? Things like that, where you've got a lot of people trying to sit down. In some of the sessions, the blue sheets are, among other things, used to figure out how many people are attending a working group. So we can figure out what size rooms we're going to have for the next time. Sometimes we get it confused. Sometimes we get a lot more people than we were expecting. So be aware that other people want to sit down. Please move your bag if you're asked to. Don't be afraid to ask somebody to move your bag. Please avoid side conversations. If you got to speak about something, go outside. It's okay to have a quick, 5-second comment, but mostly your private conversations aren't private. They're making other people go, Okay. I'm going to actually leave this the working group Jabber channel to the end because there's actually one of the tool slides. But there's a chat session available for every working group that you're in. And if you have a question or if you're not understanding what the language is, in many cases, in the Jabber session, you're going to get a transcript of what people are saying or a commentary on what people are saying. that may be easier to read, especially if you're a non-native English speaker. If not, you can sometimes ask questions in the Jabber channel to get somebody to explain, what did he just say? Okay. We're going to have 95% of the activities at an IETF meeting are working group sessions. There are also these things called birds of a feather. Working group session is the face-to-face instantiation of a working group that continues for a long period of time. Some working groups have lasted 20 years, sadly enough. Generally, a working group is designed to pick a particular problem, run for a particular length of time, produce a couple of documents that are described in its charter, and end. Sometimes we can't quite do that, so we get things that last for quite a long period of time. The face-to-face meeting is all about resolving points that have come up along that process that you can't do, that you need more bandwidth than you can get on a working group mailing list. So it is not going to be a tutorial for you. It's very rarely that you're going to get much tutorial in there. The other thing that will happen at a working group session is that you will get occasional introductions of new ideas or things that might be merged into other documents. So you might get a tiny little bit of tutorial, but mostly it's going to be about what's already going on. Okay. Occasionally, it used to be that working groups just sort of got stood up. Now we sort of do a birds of a feather session before we stand up a working group. Birds of a feather session precede the working group. Sometimes they're a one-shot discussion on a topic that we know we're not going to go to a working group on, but mostly they're there to talk about what we might want to work on. This is where we talk about the proposed charter, the proposed work items, a tutorial about the problem, so these might be a little bit more tutorial for you. And at the end of it, the AD and the BOF chairs and a few other people will figure out whether or not it makes sense to form a working group. If so, we go through the whole charting process and it shows up as a working group. BOFs generally only meet once. It's really, really rare to have a BOF meet twice. Sometimes what happens, though, is on the first BOF, you thought you were solving one problem, and at the end of I see that back there. At the end of it, I'm counting yawns just so I can figure out how I'm doing here. At the end of a BOF, sometimes the comments are such that we've realized that we can't bring up the working group in the form we thought we were going to do. So it gets respun and we do another BOF looking at what we might actually work on. So walking the halls, you're going to see a bunch of people with dots on their badges. Mostly, you're not going to interact with a lot of these folks. Internet Architecture Board, IESG, these are the area directors. Working group chairs are probably the people you're going to see the most of because you'll be sitting in working groups. Nominations Committee. We self-select our managers, our Internet Architecture Board and our area directors through this thing called the Nominations Committee, a NomCom. Does that look yellow to you for the local host? Okay. In any event, the green dot is for the guys who are here, who work with the secretariat to make sure that this meeting comes off and comes off well. They're the ones who are working with the networking staff. Thank them. They're the reason that you can actually get good internet here. Internet Administrative Oversight Committee, they are the guys who run our contracts or manage the people who manage our contracts. Internet Research Steering Group member. Again, I'll talk about the IETF a little bit later. And I think the one and only RFC series editor, I think there's only one of those dots. So, oh, sorry, and the most important one at all. You don't understand something, find the person who has one of these on their badge. Okay, go up to them, explain to them that you're new, and say, I have a question, can you help me? They may not be able to answer it, but they can probably point you to someone who can. And they have already said that they're willing to do that. So don't be shy about it, okay? Again, part of our goal as IETF participants is to make sure we have the next group of IETF participants happy and healthy. Okay. The Secretariat managed to completely and totally flummox me this time around because usually they're wandering around in purple shirts. This time they've got the black 30th anniversary. Alexa, would you stand up, please? Okay, so the Secretariat folks are the other people that you want to thank a lot for. These are the guys who manage the IETF infrastructure, the whole, the servers, the meetings, it's a long, long list. So I don't think I actually know the whole thing. So permanent staff about 10, is that right? Roughly. And then you'll see some registration staff who are generally locally hired to do the meeting things. Great people. Secretariat website is there. Please take a look at it. And again, when you see these people, if you've got a problem that you haven't been able to work out, usually they're the people that you go to in the last resort, and they will be able to hopefully point you in the right direction. Internet assigned names and numbers authority. If you are working on an internet draft and you are going to be making changes to the parameter registry, and mostly, how many people understood that statement? That's what I was afraid of. Okay, when you get further into the IETF, as you build documents, one of the things you will do is assign numbers to things that you reference, like an internet address refers to a particular host, so domain names and things like that. Parameters registry is more along the lines of, I'm blanking on what I want to say here. Parameter registry is more along the lines of what that bit meant in that packet at position 23. Okay, so when you get around to it, you're going to want to talk to these folks. Michelle's back there. And there are probably others scattered throughout the whole thing. RC editor. When it gets time to turn the internet drafts, which is the first document you will ever see in this organization, into something that we refer to as a standard, we turn them into RFCs, which stands for a really strange name, request for comments. The reason it stands for that is historical. Okay, there is an RFC editor staff and RFC editor series editor, production center, publisher, and there's also a guy who isn't actually part of the staff but is responsible for managing a series of RFCs that are independently submitted as opposed to submitted through the IETF process. This is why I said purple. These are good people. Say hi to them, thank them, please. You'll see Ray wandering around. Ray is an employee of the Internet Society, and his job is to manage the contracts of the Secretariat and folks along those lines. He basically is the guy responsible for putting his name on the signature that gets us to various hotels and things like that. IANA staff. The IANA staff and the RFC people will have tables out by the registration desk. They generally have office hours the first 3 days of the meeting. Go have fun, talk to them. They have candy. So, go by and say hi. It's a useful thing. Okay, and we finally come to slide 19. How am I doing at time? Okay, doing well. Remember I said that I wasn't going to talk about the IETF organization and such? Go read this. This talks about the history of the IETF. It talks about how we're organized, how we select some of our management. It's a good document, although I think it's probably time we updated it. The meeting wiki. There's one of these for every meeting. So this IETF 96 will change after every meeting. But for this meeting, this is the place you want to go. Most effectively useful if you're looking for somebody to take you to ride with you to the airport or come back or come from the airport when you're getting here. But there's other things that are there like the networking information stuff. Tutorials. There's a lot of information that has been put together about how the IETF works and about how to do things like write graphs and such. The tutorials directory has a bunch of that. Please go take a look. There is I think it's like five or six mailing lists that come up for every meeting. And there is a meeting list that you're subscribed to whether you want to or not that is meeting announcements. There's a meeting list there's a mailing list that you are subscribed to if you ask for it. and that goes to anybody who's going to the meetings. There's another meeting list for newcomers, which is right there. So, useful things. Network information. On your printed slide, I had a reference to a place on the main IETF page, which is, sorry. Stop that. Okay, there we go. Oh, it's now up. Okay, so you can go from here and get to there. At the time I was doing this document, it was not, seriously? Okay, I hadn't done that before. I actually thought it would just go back to the page. So anyway, if you want to figure out how to get onto our network, this is where you want to go. This is possibly the best network connectivity you will have unless you work for a company that sells it anywhere in the world. We have a great staff. We've been doing this, like I said, now for, well, we've been doing networking now for about 28 years at the meeting. So go on here. It'll help you get started. IRTF. I'm just going to mention this because you're going to see these on the agenda. IRTF, Internet Research Task Force. It's an organized activity of the Internet Architecture Board. And it is a group of people, a group of research groups that look at things that we're not ready to look at in the IETF, sort of researchy things. Delay tolerant networking was literally investigating interplanetary networking. Vint Cerf was involved in that one, by the way, which is kind of fun. One of the ones that you will probably see a lot of conversation, especially if you're working in the security area, is the Crypto Forum Research Group, which is also meeting at the IETF. You're welcome to attend these things. Some of the research groups are closed groups, so you're allowed to observe but not participate, and to join you have to basically ask to join the thing. Other than that, they're a useful way of getting an idea of what many might be doing in 5 to 10 years. Okay. More resources. Newcomers page, start here. If you haven't been to this page yet, get there now. It will point you to a lot of information that I am not discussing here. Tools page. When it's time for you to put together an internet draft, when it's time for you to submit material because you want your internet draft to be heard at a working group session, this is where you're going to be going to it. Tools page, we've been automating things constantly, and remember this thing I was talking about, the hackathon code sprint that was happening? Those tools are generally built by volunteers who work with the IETF. Occasionally we'll contract out, but quite a lot of what we've got is done by people like you. Jabber. Okay, the Jabber page will explain how our naming convention for each of the Jabber rooms that work in each working group. Join the room, you'll see what's going on. If you can't be in a meeting, if you can't be in 2 meetings at once and you still want to figure out what's going on in a different meeting and maybe make a comment, Jabber is one way of doing it. Okay. Companions page. How many of you came with people who weren't actually attending the IETF? Okay, you don't need to know this. The companion page, if you do want to bring family or kids or something like that, companions page is a resource for the people who are with you but not showing up at the IETF. It also gives you some information on how they can contact other companions. Okay, other newcomer activities. We're going to give you some wine and beer and various other things and other non-alcoholic things. There is a newcomers meet and greet later on today, about 4. Yeah, and that happens between this session and the welcome reception. So go there. Now, I'm going to tell you to be assertive. The people that are there are going to be the working group chairs, the area directors, and some other random folks who are sort of in that space. These are the people you want to have a chat with about what you want to do and how you want to do it. If they are talking to another guy with a dot on their badge, tell them, I'm a newcomer, I want to talk to you. And hopefully they will actually pay attention and go do that. Be assertive. This is your opportunity to do this. I think our current definition for newcomer is 5 meetings.
5 or fewer, yeah.
If you've been in 5 or fewer meetings, you're welcome to come to this. So you've got 4 more chances after this one to beat somebody over the head and talk to them. This is an opportunity that you should take. Please do. Newcomers dinner, very informal. I'm not really sure how they're going to get a restaurant for 55 people or 100, whatever this room is. Was Naveen in here?
No, she's not been in here.
Okay, so Naveen sort of manages, Yeah, Naveen sort of manages that list. Drop her a note, and she coordinates that dinner if you want to go.
The email address is wrong.
Oh,
It's NKH. So
now you tell me.
I'm sorry. Actually, somebody else has brought to my attention. I did not notice that. See that?
That didn't work. Okay, I will. I can't change it right now. Mentoring program. How many of you participated in the mentoring program earlier today? Okay, that's really sad. Okay, you still have a couple of opportunities. Nalani, are you in here? Okay, so the mentoring program is an opportunity to get you some one-on-one time with somebody who's been dealing with the IETF for a while. It usually happens before the newcomer session for some strange reason. Maybe we need to think about swapping the two. So take a look at it. If you're interested, talk to the mentoring coordinator and maybe set up something for your next time around. Okay, local cautions. We're in Berlin. It's actually a fairly safe place, not a big thing. The one thing that's somewhat unusual about this area is this actually is something that you do want to pay attention to. Please avoid photographing strangers. If you're photographing a crowd at a distance, not a big deal. This tends to be one of those things that is a local issue. Some pickpockets in the tourist area in the U-Bahn, nothing worse than you've seen in most other locations, and not as bad as other places we've been. Please watch your belongings. If you're not here, if you're wandering out, don't put them down and expect them to be there if you come back. So just be aware about that. And finally, feel free to yell at me. Tell me what I did right. Tell me what I did wrong. There is a survey for you to take. And at this point, I am ready to take questions, if any. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Remember what I said? Stop to the mic and tell me who you are. Yeah. Really? Cool. I always hate being questioned. Not so much. Guys, thank you very much for joining the IETF, and thank you very much for being here. I hope you have a productive session in the IETF. Please, I'm very serious. If you use this as an opportunity to make contact with folks, especially folks in the area that you're interested in. It is a unique and sometimes painful organization. As I said, I've been dealing with these folks for 30 years. It has changed over the years, and it is still exciting and still kind of scary at times how much we get done in how little time and how little sleep you get for a given week. So again, thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your time. And don't forget the newcomers reception. Go forth and standardize.